Everyone remembers their first love. That flood of emotion. The newness of it all. A feeling so intense, it's like a drug. But sometimes, when you're young and in love, you'll do anything to make sure that romantic high lasts forever. You get desperate, reckless, and before you know it, you're no longer living in a love story. You've created a nightmare. Christmas Eve, 1992. It's a chilly night in Dayton, Ohio. Residents are settling in for the night with the warmth of friends, family, and holiday lights. Suddenly, gunfire pierces the quiet Five Oaks neighborhood on the city's west side. Within minutes, the police arrive.
There's multiple uniformed Dayton police officers there securing the scene.
It seems that a young woman has been shot to death at a payphone.
We can see that she suffered several gunshot wounds. It just appeared to me that she was just caught off guard. She's trapped there.
The brutality of the attack alarms investigators.
Multiple gunshot wounds tend to get our attention a lot quicker than other cases. It shows extreme propensity to violence.
The woman has no purse, wallet, or ID. And investigators have no idea who she is or why this happened.
We need to get her identified. We need to find out why she was making a phone call.
What detectives don't realize is that identifying who killed this woman and why will lead them to the unlikeliest of suspects and into a story of young love gone horribly awry. Dayton teenager Laura Taylor had big plans for her future. She was a member of her high school's ROTC program and wanted to be a Marine.
Laura was 16 years old and a tiny, sweet-looking little girl.
Laura definitely had family that cared about her.
Parents' support and her own ambition, Laura, like so many high school girls, soon began to test the boundaries of good behavior.
She had a family. She had structure, but she didn't want that. She wanted to walk on the wild side.
During her junior year, Laura started skipping school and sneaking out after curfew.
Her parents had trouble controlling her.
The situation only got worse once Laura fell in with a group of kids who weren't afraid to take their rebellious ways to the next level.
We didn't like authority and wanted to drink and smoke marijuana.
They formed this group and they became each other's family. They were crashing at various places. They were living in cars sometimes. They were committing petty crimes to get money.
Then, one night in November, while partying with her new crew, Laura laid eyes on 19-year-old Marvellis Keene. Tall, handsome, and well-built, Marvellis had a reputation as someone folks didn't want to mess with.
Marvellis wanted to be bad, to appear bad.
Laura was immediately drawn to Marvellis's bad boy swagger. She'd never met a guy like him. When Marvellis saw something he wanted, he went after it. And apparently, what he wanted was Laura.
It's like, oh God, this man is showing me so much attention. We don't even know what we're doing because we're young.
The spark was instant. And from that night on, Laura and Marvellis were inseparable.
The relationship with Laura and Marvellis was pretty fast-paced, but that's not uncommon because Teenager, a month may seem like a year. They feel so in love. And a lot of that is based off of those intense emotions that they're feeling.
With eyes only for Marvelous, Laura's plans for her future quickly faded away.
She didn't go to school. She chose to run away to be with Marvelous. She wanted to be free.
Marvelous and Laura, they want to be king, queen.
But Laura and Marvelous's whirlwind romance was about to take a deadly detour. It's Christmas Eve, and police have found a young black female gunned down at a payphone.
My initial thoughts are try to figure out who she
And immediately make an important note.
was. Cold. She wasn't wearing a coat and did not have shoes on. And that struck me as odd.
The victim's socks are also clean, which implies to investigators that her assailant stole her coat and shoes. And while the missing shoes and coat indicate the victim's been robbed, the heinous nature of the attack suggests a more personal motive.
She was defenseless. She had been shot multiple times.
They shot her at close range, so it's not like you could survive all of that.
Because it was such a violent thing, everyone thought this wasn't a random shooting.
In total, police discover more than a dozen bullet casings around the victim. However, the ammo used in the crime is fairly unique.
This was called blazer ammunition, and it's not something we would usually see at a crime scene. We would typically see it used at a range for practice.
Blazer bullets could bring investigators one step closer to the killer, but they still need to ID their victim. Luckily, detectives don't have to look far.
We were fortunate because she was from the neighborhood, and we learned her identity to be 18-year-old Danita Gillette. She had left her residence to go make a call on the payphone and never returned.
As patrol officers stand watch over the crime scene, detectives deliver the grim news of Danita's death to her family.
I couldn't believe it. It felt like everything was going in slow motion.
She was caring. She was loving. She had a sweet spirit. She was amazing as a mother.
Danita had a baby girl that she was raising on top of going to school, and she was trying to better herself and make a great life for her and her daughter.
She went to school to be an architect. She was like, I'm going to make us a house.
According to Danita's family, the single mother had no enemies, no drama in her life of any kind. Her being murdered like this simply doesn't make sense.
I was like, no, she's not dead. Then I just couldn't believe that she was gone. My heart was broken.
I felt helpless. I just kept trying to piece together this crime in my mind.
By all accounts, this was just a normal, everyday, down-to-earth lady that's been murdered for no reason. The responsibility rests with us to find out who did that and why.
But before detectives can bring Dayton,
Little did we know that this was just the beginning and that in 48 hours, 6 people would be dead.
Laura Taylor and boyfriend Marvelous Keene were young and in love.
Laura Marvelous connected pretty quickly and was pretty hot and heavy.
But soon, detectives would uncover an undercurrent of darkness running through their Romeo and Juliet romance. One that would push a young girl to the brink. It's the early morning hours of Christmas Day, and Dayton detectives are trying to figure out who killed 18-year-old Danita Gillette. She was found shot to death at a payphone just 24 hours before.
It's difficult to find and identify a suspect. You work your most promising direction until it leads to a dead end, and you go to your next most promising direction.
However, the investigation is about to take a another, more shocking turn. Less than 24 hours after discovering Danita's body, police receive word that there's been another deadly incident involving a teenager.
They get a call that a vehicle had hit a tree head on.
First thing I see when I get there is this car up against a tree with heavy damage to the front end.
Detectives find a young man behind the steering wheel. He's deceased and seems to have died instantly. But it's clear that the cause of death wasn't the car crash.
He had been shot in the right temple.
Merry Christmas, we've got a homicide.
There's a massive amount of blood in the car on the driver's side, and windows were up. They were all intact. It was obvious that whatever occurred inside the car.
Meaning the person who had to have shot him was sitting in the front passenger seat.
A fact that suggests the victim knew his killer.
You don't have too many strangers seated next to you in the front seat of your car.
It did not appear to be a robbery, and it certainly wasn't a random shooting.
Detectives identify the victim as 19-year-old Richmond Maddox.
We did a background check. Richmond Maddox was a good kid. He had no criminal record, seemed to be doing well and making his way in life.
He was not unlike our victim on Christmas Eve in that he seemingly had no problems with anyone and was just a good young man.
Two teenagers shot. Detectives look for similarities between the two cases.
Looking at the bullet wound to the head, we learned that it was a shot from a .32 caliber gun, but at the scene of Danita Gillette. The weapon used was a .25 caliber automatic.
Detectives didn't find the blazer shell casings that were used in Danita's murder, so they felt the two murders weren't connected.
With two different guns and two different types of ammo, detectives consider another frightening possibility. That there's not one, but two killers on the loose in Dayton this Christmas.
Not that any particular homicide makes sense, but these were particularly senseless. We just kept asking ourselves, why?
Whoever pulled the trigger must have fled the scene just before or after the car hit the tree. Maybe someone in the neighborhood caught a glimpse of the killer.
There was a witness who actually observed a young black female jump from the car prior to it crashing and then ran away.
Who is this mystery woman? In search of answers, detectives speak with the family of Richmond Maddox.
Detectives talked to his family to see if they had any idea who could have been in the car with him that night.
We learned that an ex-girlfriend had called him a couple of times that night.
According to Richmond's family, that ex-girlfriend is 16-year-old Laura Taylor. Police are skeptical a 16-year-old girl would execute her ex-boyfriend in the front seat of a car. But with no other leads, they must exhaust all possibilities.
At that point in time, we were looking for Laura Taylor.
Upon reaching Laura's home, detectives observe that it certainly doesn't look the part of a killer's residence.
It didn't appear that there was chaos or drugs in the home or violence in the home, anything like that. Just an average home.
However, Laura's family informs police that their daughter had started acting out a few months prior. And over the last several weeks, things had only gotten worse.
We learned that she has been gone about 2.5 weeks and that they don't know where she is.
After speaking with Laura's family, detectives issue a bolo on the 16-year-old runaway. No sooner has the bolo gone out than Dayton police receive word of yet another homicide.
Everyone was saying, oh my God, this is the worst Christmas. What terrible, terrible crimes have happened.
In an effort to stem this wave of holiday violence, and that the motive is rooted in one young woman's love for her man.
One of the evidence technicians yells, "You need to take a look at this." That's when it really hit us.
Love can absolutely cause us as women to do things that we would never normally do.
Dayton, Ohio detectives are desperate to find the killers responsible for gunning down 2 teenagers. There are few leads in either case, but 16-year-old Laura Taylor is wanted for questioning in the murder of Richmond Maddox, her ex-boyfriend. There's just one problem. Laura is nowhere to be found.
Laura Taylor chose to run away 2 weeks prior to Christmas and not come home.
Then, on the morning of December 26th, the homicide unit gets summoned to a third crime scene.
A robbery occurs at a mini-mart there in West Dayton. 2 people have been shot.
All the victims have been removed to a hospital. A gunshot wound leaves blood spatter like no other injury. We could tell that obviously someone was shot behind the counter by someone standing in front of the counter. There's blood in 2 other areas, and this is a very, very small store. But there's still nowhere to run. You're trapped.
Robberies occur all over the country all the time. People come in and wield a gun or a knife, take money and leave. But on this case, it was just particularly brutal. Hard to imagine someone doing this.
First responders informed detectives that there were 2 victims with gunshot wounds. 64-year-old customer Jones Pettis was shot in the stomach, but thankfully, the injury isn't life-threatening. 38-year-old store owner and mother Sarah Abraham wasn't as fortunate. She was shot multiple times and died shortly after arriving at the hospital.
Everyone in the neighborhood loved Sarah. She treated everyone with dignity. She came to work every day. She had no problems with anyone.
She's just a nice lady. Everyone thought the world of her.
A third person, 71-year-old mini-mart employee Jimmy Thompson, is miraculously unharmed. Jimmy gives detectives